Good afternoon, Oklahoma. A warm welcome to our 2020 Women on Boards Oklahoma conversation. All right, you've enjoyed some great hype music and you were introduced to the amazing group of men and women that are a part of our program today. So let's begin. So, how did we get here? I want to introduce an amazing woman that believed in a vision. She saw an issue and she put her money, her time, and energy into making something happen. Thus, 2020 Women on Boards. I want to welcome Stephanie Sonneborn, who is co-founder and chair of 2020 Women on Boards, to the stage with me.
Thank you, Annette. It's my pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you to all of our sponsors, co-chairs, panelists, leadership committee, director coaches, and especially to all of you participating at this event. This year, we celebrate the 10th year of the 2020 Women on Boards campaign. Mally Giro and I started the campaign in 2010 because we were dismayed by the lack of progress women were making getting on boards. The percentage of women on the board of the Russell 3000, the largest US company, was stagnant at about 10%. At that time, some people said that our goal to getting to 20% women on boards by 2020 was too bold, and others said it wasn't bold enough. But we're here today celebrating because we achieved our goal in 2019 nationally. And while Oklahoma hasn't quite gotten there, I do believe that they will be there very soon. On a positive note, of the 16 companies headquartered in Oklahoma on the Russell 3000, only one has no women on their boards. And as Melanie Hobson said at the Global Conversation on November 12th, we are pleased but not satisfied. And Annette will be sharing with you more details about both Oklahoma and the global campaign.
Stephanie, thank you for taking time to be with us. We really appreciate you being here. They've done some amazing things. They're bold women and they're on a mission. So I want to go back and just remind all of us, 2020 Women on Boards is an education advocacy campaign, and it's committed to achieving gender balance on corporate boards. As she said, this is the 10th anniversary. We have reached that first milestone. And Oklahoma, this event is one of 30 board diversity conversations occurring across our country and around the world. It's a special honor to engage in this important conversation. We have influential CEOs with us today, corporate directors, senior executives, community leaders, and advocates. So welcome, everybody. I want to thank the co-chairs. So when I stepped into this chair role, there were a few people I knew that I would not move forward with if they didn't say yes, and I'm so glad they did. Trish Horn of OG&E is a co-chair, Jennifer Cummings with Merrill Lynch, Kitty Asbury with the Oklahoma Commission on the Status of Women, and Sherry Dale, the Matisse Group. They have worked tirelessly to make sure that this event not only had the right people here, but that the sponsorship and leadership team is in place. They've been amazing to work with, and so thank you, ladies. I appreciate everything you've done. And a huge heartfelt appreciation to our leadership committee. They're comprised of talented executives, or as I call them, the dream team. They've been on this journey and they have really opened their networks and continued the conversation. And I'm very grateful for all that they have done. Thank you, leadership team. I know you saw on the walk-in slides, we'll be using Slido today. So if you will go on your phone or your iPad to slido.com and enter our hashtag, you will be pushed questions throughout this program. You'll be, as you answer them, you'll get real-time results. And we will also be doing an echo at the end of this event with a survey and sending you this report as well. Scott Brady is in the chat and he will be facilitating Slido. So if you have any questions, he is there to answer and kind of guide you as we go. So I want to go to our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we would not be able to hold events like this. Our global sponsors have invested a lot in Women on Boards, and we really appreciate them helping us further advocate and build awareness. And we're very grateful for those sponsors. We also have supporters of Oklahoma, our Oklahoma initiative. OSU OKC, we're proud to have students from their president's leadership class. It's amazing to get young people that are looking at leadership and what it means to be on boards and to build their resumes. And so they will be in the breakout rooms with us, and they'll be scribing and learning. And so they're getting mentored along the way. So welcome to our students. What a great way for them to just get right into their careers. We also want to thank MD Building Products, Wheeler Labs, Xeno Technology, Integris, Prairie Surf Media, and Future Point of View. Those are our Oklahoma sponsors. And then our friends of 2020 Women on Boards, we really appreciate them. These are organizations that believe in women in leadership, and they put their money where their values are. And so we greatly appreciate them. There are three components of today's event. First, you're going to learn the progress we have made in terms of representation on the Russell 3000 nationally and in Oklahoma, which Stephanie referred to. Second, you're going to hear an amazing panel and our keynote speakers, and they're going to give you kind of their story to the boardroom and valuable insights. And then last, you're going to participate in an interactive breakout session that are led by our esteemed director and coaches. You really don't want to miss any of it. So get your notebook, your iPad, and get ready to capture some key insights. We encourage you to use the chat. We have our leadership team and directors are in our chat, and feel free to ask questions as we move along and connect and engage. We would really like to hear from you. Okay, so now let's get to the progress we made. The percentage of women on the Russell 3000 has steadily increased in the past 4 years. So we've gone from 16% nationally to 22.6% of women on those Russell 3000 boards. At the same time, the percentage of women of companies headquartered in Oklahoma, we've increased from 12.1% to 17.8%. We are almost there. We are close. So among the 25 states in the US that have more than 20 companies on the Russell 3000, all but two, which is Florida and Utah, they exceeded the 20% goal for women on their boards this year. The states that achieved more than 20% for the first time are Alabama, Colorado, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Texas. And I believe with the Oklahoma initiative, we will going to be on this list next year. There are 16 companies on the Russell 3000 that are headquartered in Oklahoma. 8 or 50% are winning companies, and that means they have 20% or greater women on their board. That's a total of 30 women on the Russell 3000 for headquartered in Oklahoma companies. Imagine if all the Oklahoma companies had 20% or greater women represented. We only need 12 more. And that's depending on whether they add a seed or retire a male. But again, we are really close. But as you heard, Stephanie, we've reached our goal in 2019, of course, just as most women do, right? We just plug along and reach our goal faster than we expect. Now, 20% is no longer good enough. Our campaign advocates for gender balance boards, which is an equal number or one more or less woman on an odd number board. So again, our new campaign is gender balance. So 2020 Women on Boards will become 50-50 women on boards as we strive towards parity. This is a bold goal, but we have always been a bold organization. And with leaders like Stephanie and Molly at the helm, I have no doubt that we won't reach this goal. Today in Oklahoma, there are 0 companies out of the 16 with gender balance boards. If you look at the national number, there's only 163 companies that have gender balance boards. So that means 5% are gender balanced. So we have our work cut out for us. The vision is that all public company boards will be gender balanced with women holding half of those corporate board seats. And I do think I want to just celebrate the work we've accomplished over the last 10 years. You know, we got to get to work on this 50-50 goal, but I do think we've accomplished a lot. And there are groups, like I said, 30 events like this that have happened across the US and internationally, that it's about awareness and building these pipelines and these initiatives to really help advance our goals. So we will continue to educate and collaborate and advocate for more women and diversity on boards. So speaking of educating, the 2020 Women on Boards, they do an excellent job in their highly popular Get on Boards workshop. It will resume in February of 2021, so go check out the details on their website. And they have a new program, Path to the Boardroom, for women in their mid-career, and it will begin in Q1 of 21. So I get asked a lot, how do I get started to be board ready? These are two great steps that you can take. So now let's get on to the main attraction, our superstar panel. So we are in for a treat today with Trish Horn as moderator. I'm going to ask her to come on stage with me as I introduce her. Trish is an officer with one of our winning companies that we talk about, OG&E Corp, Energy Corp. Her current role, after being vice president over legal, compliance, environmental, health and safety, regulatory, and HR for OG&E companies since 1998, is vice president of governance, and she's corporate secretary for OG Energy. In this role, she works alongside the chairman of the board and CEO to help position the independent board of directors in their very important oversight role for the company. Trish enjoys honing good governance for the company she serves, and also being challenged by shareholder proponents and activist organizations who seek to find avenues to assist companies with their governance assistance. Before her legal career, Trish was Teacher of the Year right here in Oklahoma, and she'll be the first to tell you that her teaching and parenting of 5, which I can't imagine, has prepared her for the toughest of corporate situations. So Trish, I value you as a mentor and a friend, and for being a co-chair and moderating today. And I have to say, she comes straight off the New York Stock Exchange floor yesterday, where she was a part of the bell ringing with the OG&E board of directors. So Trish, it is great to have you here, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Annette. What a wonderful introduction. I have to give my accolades back to Annette. The group that she's assembled to work on this project has been phenomenal. It's been good to work with the team. I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of it. I also want to say it's a very important topic for us. Thank you, 2020 Women on Boards, for doing what you're doing to move this forward. I'm honored to be here with my friends and my fellow women on board advocates. Some of us are board ready and some of us are board advocates, and others are community volunteers looking to help any way they can. I really feel that the energy in Oklahoma on this is very apparent. I think Oklahoma is ready to take this to the next level. Annette, did you hear that too? It is my honor to introduce our distinguished panelists, and so I'm going to do that now. If I could ask the panelists to join us, I want to have them on the screen so that as I introduce them, you can see who's joining us today. I'll just give them a moment to get on screen. I'm going to be introducing each one of them. We have a distinguished panel. I know that there are many of us attending this program that thrive on creativity. We're launching iconic brands, and developing unique customer experiences would be a dream job. Allow me to introduce you to Cami Dunaway. Cami, do you mind to wave for us? Cami is currently the Chief Marketing Officer for Duolingo, the world's most popular way to learn languages online. Over 300 million users. She has also held roles with Yahoo, Frito-Lay, Nintendo, and somewhere in all of her career building, she was recruited to be on the board of directors for companies you will recognize: Red Robin Gourmet Burgers, Planet Fitness, Marketo, and Brunswick. Plus, in addition to all of that, she's authored a book. Be ready for Cami's advice, because she will certainly provide a unique journey and perspective to the board business. Next, I'd like to introduce Sam Combs. Sam is comfortable with the C-suite. For almost a decade, he was the president of O&G and ONEOK Distribution, where he oversaw a $3 billion business, led a 3,000-person workforce. Also, Sam is comfortable in the boardroom. He is currently an independent director of First Fidelity Bank, and he serves on 3 of their standing committees, the Audit, Comp, and the Governance Committee, which he chairs. Sam has also been on numerous nonprofit and government agencies. Just to list a few: Tulsa Community College, Ascension St. John Hospital, Oklahoma Hall of Fame, John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation, and the Philbrook Museum of Art. He has served on the board of governors for the Women's National Basketball Association and many other energy industry boards. Speaking of Oklahoma roots, I cannot imagine having a panel without an Oklahoma State University alum. Sam was paid a large retainer to be the only male on this panel today. Of course, I'm just teasing. You'll know that when you talk with Sam, he's mentioned to me many times how this topic of adding women and diversity to our corporate boards is a topic about which he's committed and for which he advocates change and progress. Thank you, Sam, for adding your perspective to this panel. Next, I'd like to introduce Patty Moore. What would be an Oklahoma panel without a die-hard Oklahoma Sooner fan? That's Patty Moore. Patty lives in Broken Arrow and is an OU graduate. You may remember Patty. She spent 12 years with Sonic, serving as their president and a member of the board. They were headquartered in Oklahoma City at that time. Next, she moved to Red Robin Gourmet Burgers, where she served on the board for 12 years, as chair for 10, and then interim CEO last year. Some might say that's where the fun really began. And I might just say, if you think this position was about burgers on that corporate board, it wasn't. Think again. It was about building a board, hiring CEOs, and dealing with activists. We hope we get a question about challenges today because Patty will certainly weigh in on that one. Patty currently serves on the boards of ONEOK, One Gas, and Quick Trip. They're all based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What a diverse set of industries to govern and oversee. Patty, we can't wait to hear about your experiences and your guidance. Thank you for joining. Next up is Sheila Talton. Sheila has had a 40-year career as an innovative business and market builder. She has expertise in technology. She has held significant positions at organizations that have pioneered the current technology environment, companies like Cisco Systems, EDS, and EY. Today, she serves on the boards of 3 publicly traded companies, one near and dear to my heart, OGE Energy Corp, Deere, all of us that see the Deere equipment know the Deere company, and Cisco. Quite a journey from the Chicago nonprofit where Sheila accepted her first board position. I think we'll be hearing about that today. In addition to her board responsibilities, Sheila is an active CEO for Gray Matter Analytics, a healthcare analytics solution company. Sheila has a remarkable story. I can't wait to have you hear her comments and insight. Finally, I'd like to welcome Sherry Mixa. Sherry is joining us from the Tulsa area. Sherry is all about experience, both in the CEO chair and serving on boards. With her expertise in turnarounds and transformation, in addition to growth and brand building, she's a recognized name in the industry that she serves, which is the restaurant and food service industry. Companies such as Mazzio's, Taco Bell, Seattle's Best Coffee, Rubio's, and Robix, to name a few. Sherry can best be described as it relates to her multiples in what she has done. 4-time CEO of franchise restaurant chains, 3 times operations executive, 4-time nonprofit board member, including the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce, where she also served on the nominating committee, the National Branding Committee, and the CEO Diversity and Inclusion Roundtable. Sherry currently serves on the board of CVCA Cardiac Care for Pets and the Gleam Network. A longtime passion and one that she is sharing today is her focus on mentoring and development of executives and board-ready women. You will enjoy hearing from Sherry today. Isn't this a wonderful panel? So welcome to all the panel. So excited for them to be here. I'm now going to move to our questions. So I'd like for us to start looking and thinking about that. Taking me a minute here to think about moving to that. I'm going to be introducing the questions, and I'm going to be just calling on different panelists, and I also invite the panelists to weigh in on a question as we get to one that they would like to weigh in on. You know, our whole conversation today is about inclusion and diversity. And one of the things that I wanted to ask the panelists is, why is board diversity and having female voices in the boardroom so important? Patty, could I ask you to weigh in on that question?
I'd be happy to, Trish. And in fact, I'm going to share a story because I learned this the importance of this firsthand when I had the opportunity to serve on my first board outside of Sonic. I was president of Sonic, and I learned that ONEOK was looking for a board member in Oklahoma City. One of Sonic's board members actually came to me and said he was going to recommend me for the position. So mentoring started very early. I had the opportunity to meet with the chair of the governance committee and then the then chair and CEO, David Kyle of ONEOK. I've got to tell you, my first question to them was, why me? I sell burgers and fries for a living. And David laughed and said, you know, we've got a lot of people who know our business. I'm really looking for diversity of thought. And that was really enlightening. That was in 2002. And there were already 2 females on the ONEOK board. And he went on to say, we want people on the board who think differently, who have different perspectives, and who will ask different questions without some of the assumptions and baggage that we bring to the table. Well, that was a valuable lesson and one that has proven true so far. As females, we bring that diversity of thought to boards, and it's a valuable and important thing for businesses to have.
I'd also like to ask if maybe there's something that Cammie might want to join in and tell us a little bit about the diversity that she's seen. Cammie?
Sure, I absolutely agree
Welcome.
with Patty that it's critical for companies to make sure that their board really represents the audiences they serve, the customers they serve, the consumers they serve. And I think the evidence is pretty definitive that diverse perspectives lead to better decisions. One other thing I'd like to say is, even from a societal point of view, I think that it's so important that women have the opportunity to serve on boards, because I think the world needs more women CEOs, more women founders of companies. And I know myself that I have been able to grow and develop so much as an executive and as a leader by being exposed to the different kinds of challenges that I've faced on boards, and also being exposed to, you know, wonderful business leaders, co-board members that I've been able to learn from.
Excellent. You know, it's so true that there's value in diversity. And so when we think about moving everyone toward a board position, I'd like to now turn and talk a little bit about the journey to your first board seat. One of my favorite quotes by Joseph Campbell is, if your life is set out like a set of stones on a path, it's likely not your life. We each have very unique stories, don't we? Sheila, could you share your journey to your first board seat and maybe tell us how that happened and what led to other opportunities?
Yes, I will first start with my journey in serving on non-for-profit boards, because that, I believe, is very, very important. Number one, we all have something to contribute and give in the non-for-profit world, and it is finding your passion about whatever that is. For me, it was enabling people who might have somewhat of a handicap and or physical impairment, but giving them an opportunity to still have dignity and work. So I was recruited actually by one of my daughter's classmates' mother to join the Chicago Lighthouse for the Blind board. That is a board that we basically would get different types of companies around the Chicago area to give contracts to the Chicago Lighthouse for the Blind, so that we could actually employ and pay people who were coming to the lighthouse. As a result of that, we decided that we were having such success at the lighthouse that we needed to build addition onto our facility, and we decided to launch a capital campaign. I took a leadership role in that activity, in that capital campaign. And one of the individuals that we recruited to help with the capital campaign was the CFO of McDonald's Corporation, Jack Greenberg. I got to know Jack very, very well. It ended up actually after I went to work at Ernst & Young that Jack by that time was CEO of McDonald's. But through that activity, I learned a lot. Jack subsequently introduced me to a number of other senior executives around the Chicago area. So by the time that I was actually asked to join a public company board between the Chicago Lighthouse of the Blind, the Chicago Urban League, as well as Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I had a lot of non-for-profit board experience. Then when I was at Cisco Systems working in China, one of my former colleagues from Ernst & Young, who was on the audit side, called me up while I was in China and said, Sheila, we have an audit client that is looking for someone with a technology background, global background, and he'd like them to be a female. Would you be interested? So I flew back. I had lunch with the CEO at the time of ACCO Brands. ACCO made, everybody probably has a Swingline stapler on their desk somewhere. That was one of ACCO's signature products. And that was my first public company board experience. But I want to emphasize that the preparedness from the non-for-profit allowed me to be able to understand the role of the board and where is, they say, nose in and fingers out.
Thank you. It all starts somewhere, doesn't it?
Yes.
Sherry, your path has been very unique and you've served on many different types of boards. And today you have a mission about one of these being a volunteer board to advance women into leadership roles. Would you like to share this path with us and help us to see ways that perhaps some of us can see a path to a board seat?
Absolutely. Thank you, Trish. And Sheila, like you, my first board role was also a nonprofit. In my early days, when I was running restaurants for Taco Bell, my boss encouraged me to join an organization called the Women's Food Service Forum, which was way ahead of its time in identifying that the founders saw that there was an opportunity for the fact that we were the second largest employer, the food service and hospitality and restaurant industry, the largest employer in the country, and yet we had a dearth of females in the C-suite and the boardroom. And a group of women and male leaders in the industry started the Women's Food Service Forum, and I joined and was active on committees, served on the mentor program, and ultimately chaired that committee. I served on the CEO Advisory Council and handled executive programming, which ultimately also led us to create a board readiness opportunity where companies could come to us when they were looking for qualified female board candidates. And so we offered a lot of services over time. And in fact, I was invited to serve on the board of directors because of my passion around the organization. And we had read the Catalyst research then that talked about the business case for diversity and really understood the need for advancement and the elevation of women into these key roles. And I can say that actually going all the way back to my days of running restaurants for Taco Bell, the people that I met through that organization, whether on the board, as committee members, or CEOs and executives of golden age corporations around the country, many of them have been instrumental over the years as mentors, as sponsors, certainly as references, and a number of them have also been active in referring me to board opportunities in the future. So it really is important that first board that you get known, that you drive for results and make things happen. And ultimately, I've since now served on 7 corporate boards and 4 nonprofit boards, a couple of them while I was also serving as CEO, but others, generally, they've come from people that I've known, connections that I've made, and that early network that I started to build at the executive level in the industry.
Thank you, Sherry. Certainly a varied path that you have and just been in a lot of different things. I love the point that you make about the operations background and how the results that you showed evidence to everyone you're ready for the next step. I think that's a good point for all of us. I do want to go back a moment and talk a little bit to Sam. I didn't miss talking to you, Sam, on the first question about why is diversity important? Do you have any points that you could add to us about why we would even be considered, why diversity and having a gender balanced board would be something that would be helpful to businesses?
Sure, and thank you, Trish. First, let me just thank Women on Boards for their work and for inviting me to be here today. I'm honored to be here with these ladies who are all great achievers. And just wanted to say that first.
Thank you.
With that, yes, I mean, it's I think vitally important when you think about boards. They need perspective, as Patty indicated, and others, and they need balance. And the whole art. There's an art and science to governance, and part of it is trying to use good judgment, making good decisions, whether it be strategy, risk mitigation, those fundamental things that boards are supposed to do in the governance field. And so if you have good people around the table with varying types of experiences, they'll bring their perspectives. And with those perspectives, it balances out the decision making. And you'll probably hear me say this more than once today. I always am concerned about the question I didn't ask and what could go wrong. And what you're really trying to eliminate on the risk side is what is it we didn't see coming, and those blind spots. So women are uniquely positioned to do and help and assist with that. And they need to be at the table.
Thank you. We appreciate your perspectives. I'm now going to turn to some questions. We've heard about diversity and why we think it's important to run our business with diversity and what it brings. We've heard that there's a path that everyone can take. So now I'm wondering, what could we hear from these experts about when we think about the different pathways? Before we start thinking about a board and our pathway, we need to start thinking about what do we need to do to be board ready? What skills and experience? We can't just arrive one day and say we're board ready. Patty, you've been there, you've built some boards. Can you help us understand that skills and experience that we might be wanting to hone?
Sure, be happy to. I think being board ready means being comfortable with the type of topics and the issues that are going to be discussed in a boardroom. I'll go back to what Sheila said about getting the experience, and others have said it too, on nonprofit boards. It's a wonderful way, whether it's nonprofit, your university, many of them have boards for the different colleges, the community. Get involved, get engaged, volunteer for leadership positions. You need to be comfortable with strategic planning. You need to be comfortable with implementation and what goes on in a boardroom. Maybe it comes from a senior management position or supporting senior management, but you've got to be comfortable that. You've also got to have some financial acumen. Now, you don't have to be a financial expert to be on a board, but you do have to know how to read a financial statement. And again, there's lots of ways to do that. I have a degree in public relations, and I always made sure that on my nonprofit boards, which is where I started as well, I asked to be on the Budget and Finance Committee. In fact, I was on the National Arthritis Foundation board. They asked me to be corporate secretary. I said no, but that I would be glad to be treasurer because I thought it would stretch me and help me get more financial acumen. So get that. You've got to also be comfortable talking to and working with other executives. They're going to be your peers on the boards. They may be former CEOs and CFOs. But again, as Sheila pointed out, in a nonprofit setting, you'll be peers with them and you'll get comfortable in that setting. So there's lots you can do. There's education, there's get mentors, but the most important thing is get engaged in other types of boards and get comfortable with how governance works.
Just sounds like getting that experience, get out there and put ourselves out to try to get that experience. Very good. I know that you mentioned mentors, and I'd like to build on that a little bit because I do think there's a real place for mentors and what we often refer to as sponsors to help us find that path. And I'm just wondering, how and should we explore those opportunities? Sherry, could you perhaps, I know you've had, your passion right now is that volunteer organization that you're working on. Can you help us understand how we should explore those opportunities and maybe how we do that? Do we go talk to the CEO and tell him we're interested, tell her we're interested? Do we go to other leaders and tell them that we're interested in board service? How does that happen?
Absolutely. Thanks, Trish. All of the above. The reality is, one of the things I remember from my days at the Women's Food Service Forum, we actually had 12 competencies there, and many of them were the things that Patty has outlined and others have outlined around the financial and business acumen and around strategic thinking. But there were others that were more softer skills around risk taking and taking initiative and really setting yourself up for success. And one of them actually was coaching and mentoring. And we realized all the way back then that having a mentor and having a sponsor and having a coach and having your own personal board of directors are all important things as you wanted to move yourself up the corporate ladder, into the boardroom. And so one of the things that I have always felt is important is to give yourself an opportunity to have a mentor. And the simplest thing to do is take the initiative, take the risk to ask. And I find that so many of us that have had the opportunity to progress in our careers and have arrived in the C-suite and have held board of directors roles, we're very happy to be asked. And often people are surprised to hear that. But you do have to take the initiative and you do have to reach out. And if you find somebody in your industry or in a company that you're particularly interested in, take the opportunity to introduce yourself, make your wishes known. And it really is an opportunity for people to take that initiative. I'll also say that right now I serve on the board of an organization called the Gleam Network. And we are a startup nonprofit, so I'm learning the governance side of nonprofits now. And I lead the mentoring programs, and our focus is on providing mentorship and leadership development to the underserved and the underrepresented in the food service and hospitality industry. And right now, there's a lot of people in our industry that are struggling that may not have that leadership development or mentorship available to them. And so we provide access to people like myself that are in the C-suite or in CEO roles who are giving back. And we're finding, and the research shows this, that people that have had mentors and sponsors more directly who also can introduce them in for an opportunity, they are going to tend to get ahead because they've had that little extra oomph and that little extra push. And I encourage everyone who is interested on continuing to drive themselves in their careers and into board roles to reach out and ask for people to help them in either a mentor or sponsor role.
Thank you, Sherry. Very good idea. Very good ideas. We've got to be courageous and get out there and start asking for that feedback and that help. Sam, besides being asked by an aspiring up-and-comer about assisting on how to move forward with the board, as noted by Sherry, it's really imperative that companies and organizations have others in the C-suites and others on boards that are seeking to advocate for women and minorities. You're kind of our key, Sam, today to maybe help us explore how can we get this group engaged. And the group I'm talking about is current CEOs and current board members. How can we get them engaged in our vision? Do you have some ideas?
Well, let me try, okay? I think, advocacy says that there is an outward expression of support and endorsement of some type. And so one, it really helps if men ask these questions about gender diversity, racial balance and equity. And that should be done internally and externally. When I think about internal, for those of us that are on boards, there are opportunities in the board meeting when these discussions come up. Maybe there's a discussion about board composition outside of nominating and governance committee work, and an opportunity to add to it. There's certainly opportunities in compensation committee meetings, if you're serving on one of those, to ask the questions about the pipeline. Where are the women? And because if you create more women, more diversity in people of color that are moving through the organization into the executive ranks, then they're going to be more board ready as they move forward. Externally, being a person that's willing to make some introductions, possibly become a mentor if they want a male mentor. I've had ladies that have asked me about things related to that. I've had fellow board members after they've onboarded to come to me and say, ask me, how am I doing? I think it's important that we're encouraging, and feedback is most people want it, but it means something if you're encouraging. And so that particular person turned out, once she got comfortable, she's a very good board member. And I've tried my best to encourage her and just to reassure her that that everything was okay. But I think externally, we have to make people aware that of the benefits of adding that female perspective. And one thing I'll just leave you with that I always tell men is that women buy most of the things in this country. And they're 51% of the population. It didn't take me long to figure that out, that you might ought to, you know, understand how they think about things.
Thank you. That's helpful. You know, diversity in the boardroom or in the C-suite, you know, we've talked about it, it's so important. But just adding them and just getting them there, it's really not enough. To truly unlock the value, boards and senior leadership must embrace and encourage these new and diverse voices. I want to reach out to Sheila. Sheila, you're on several boards, several public company boards, and I know you work with them. I'm just wondering if you could share with us some board practices, or are you seeing a change in board culture to allow for greater diversity of thought? Are you seeing pointers? Could maybe you give us some pointers on how participants can ensure their voice is heard in the boardroom?
Yes, and I will also give a story. I'll be a little vague about some of the details in the story because it actually happened in a boardroom. But many of you who read my bio know that I've been in technology, as Trish said, for close to 40 years. And as a result of that, most of the time I've been recruited to be on a board because I have a technology background, and of course now governance as well because of the number of boards that I have sat on. A couple of things that I think that are very important to make sure that voices are heard. And one is something that Sam touched on briefly, but having advocacy by your male counterparts in that boardroom is extremely important. Because oftentimes when you are the only woman, or in this particular story, there were two women, men dominated the conversation. And as a result of not listening to us, it was not a good outcome. So I mentioned my technology background. I sat on a board. And when I normally join a board, I usually want to meet with the chief information officer. I want to understand all of the aspects of technology, not because I'm going to be managing it as a board member, but I need a good grounding and foundation of what is there. So that as I sit and I listen in the board meetings and technology teams present to us and they talk about their roadmaps and things that they're doing, I know from where they're coming from. This particular board, I did exactly that, spent time and looked at the systems. And in one case, I saw a system in our industry called green screen. That means it's been around a very long time. And this happened to be a warehouse system. And it was only one person that knew the intricacies of that system. Myself and the other woman on the board, and we both sat on the audit committee. She led the audit committee. We both said, this is a problem. We need to seriously upgrade this system. Pushback, oh, we're not going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to reconfigure technology. I mean, you technologists, that's all you guys want to do is spend money. Well, when it came audit time, our auditors came in, and as a result of that, we ended up getting a, I'm sorry, what's the audit term? I just lost my, anyway, we didn't pass the audit from a technology perspective. That is not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the company. And in this particular case, it wasn't even a good thing for me because I was the only technologist on that board. When it came time for recommendations from Glass Lewis and ISS for votes, myself and the other female director was recommended a no vote, although we were the two that basically was saying we had an issue. I remember when I retired and left that board, I stayed and I helped hire a new CIO. I stayed until we passed and got a clean audit. And I remember at my going away party, the CEO says to me, well, it only took us about 5 years, I guess, Sheila, to listen to you. But I say that to say that it was only myself and the other female that just was alarmed at this, right? And had we had more male voices that were advocates for what we were saying, we probably would not have ended up in that situation with the audit. So
Those diverse voices can really bring in to be helpful. They really can. Appreciate that.
Trish, do you mind if I add something to what Sheila said?
Please, Sam.
When I think about boards, and I mentioned earlier, perspective and balance, that's from an individual contributor is the way I think about it. But in terms of the board itself, the magic of that composition and that mix is over time in being in governance and chairing governance, you try to look for one, engagement, and then you like to have good chemistry amongst your board members. And sometimes it happens naturally, sometimes because of just the busyness of the world and the in and out, people don't have an opportunity to really connect. And I think this is where companies have to think clearly about it and maybe rethink it. A board is really a team, and good chemistry is developed through trust. And with trust, but board members are in the instance, that example that Sheila gave, we've all been in those or seen similar situations, if we haven't been in it, where you didn't know if your voice was being heard. And as a African-American male, I've been in that situation, but I think it's important for that boards and governance chairs and CEOs understand that engaged board and that chemistry among the board members will give you a better product.
Certainly will. Thank you for sharing that. Our diversity stats have improved, but we still have a long way to go. So one of the things that we can do sometimes is ask questions. One of our panelists, I'll just say, in talking with her and talking with people that know her, Cammie just has a way of knowing the right questions and the right way to ask it. So I'm really going to ask Cammie to weigh in here on just how can we help directors and senior leaders, how can we ask right questions to them and push management a little bit further to drive that greater diversity and inclusion that we're looking for. And not only in boardrooms, we want that in our leadership, but all the way through the company, we're looking for that. Are there some questions or a way to address that, Cammie, that you could lead us with?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's important to understand is that part of the role of a board is to look around the corners and to really be thinking about the long view. Because management frequently is having to manage today's crisis. And so the board is really there to help make sure that the company is set up to win in the long run. And one of the components of that is making sure that you have the right pipeline of talent to win in the long run. Talent within your management team, as well as talent on the board. So I think one of the places that kind of good questions come in is really in thinking about pipeline development, thinking about succession planning, and just making sure that you're taking the long view. I think it's interesting that when 2020 was first set up, they didn't say, let's hit 20% by next year. they said, this is going to be a journey. Let's commit to that journey, and let's commit to developing the processes and the people who will be able to serve. So I think sometimes, questions aren't just about why are you not hitting your revenue target that you set last week. It really is about making sure that you're preparing for success in the future.
Excellent. Being innovative thinking and forward thinking, all of those are good. And so many times by posing that question, you do get them thinking that way.
Could
Trish,
I
can I just add something to that? I had the pleasure of watching Cammie, being a board member with her, and she was really good at asking what I would call not leading questions, but instructive questions. She would often ask, and I think this is the best way to get the best out of management, to not make them defensive. She would often ask, have you considered? What other options have you thought about? And what are the consequences? What are the unintended consequences of doing that? And I watched Cammie do that with great finesse, and it was a great way to open up the conversations.
Great point, Patty.
Thank
Sheila,
you
you
for
wanna-
that. I'll also say I learned by doing that poorly on the first board that I was on. And, to Sam's point, the chemistry and the trust and respect between board and management is really special. And I think my first board, I went in kind of guns blazing, thinking I just needed to point out every hole, and quickly learned that that was not the way to make the most impact.
Good points. Sheila, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I wanted to add, besides when Cammie was talking about, and Patty, both around the vision and looking around the corner, it's just not from an operational perspective, but it's also from a talent perspective. I have sat in so many board meetings, and I look at the senior management team from a different lens than what some of my male counterparts. First of all, they're quite comfortable that there maybe aren't any women on their senior management teams, because that's the way the world always has been. But when you add a woman or a person of color on your board, besides evaluating and looking at the talent, pure talent to execute, then you look at the talent and the diversity of that talent. I'll tell you another quick story that just happened yesterday. I had a board meeting at Deere, obviously virtual, but Deere did a fabulous job of actually taking us on a virtual tour of one of our plants in Waterloo, Iowa. And they set it up like if you watch football, where you have the headsets and, they're talking about the various things going on in the plants. They were all three women. And I cannot tell you, my female counterparts on that board, we noticed that. The men noticed that. But had there been all males and no females on that board, no one would be thinking that, what's wrong with that? They're guys. They're telling you what's going on in the plant. And one of those women was the plant manager for our combine plant.
Excellent observation. Thank you for sharing.
Trish, I have one additional add to all of the excellent points. As we look at how we get a more diverse and inclusive board of directors, one of the things that we all can do is, as we are on board, is
Jerry, we're just not hearing you. I'm wondering if you can, I know it may be a something outside your control, but maybe just try to speak up a little bit more. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think that's better.
Okay. So my comment was that one of the things that we can all do as board members to increase the diversity and inclusion on boards is make sure that where we have opportunities to serve on committees, that we serve on the compensation committee, where we get access to seeing how, in fact, I'm trying to get myself back there.
Yes, we're hearing you better just with audio on, Sherry. I think we'll take off your camera, and
Okay.
I think it's some of the streaming that's causing a little bit of the interference. Please go ahead.
No worries. My comment was that we have the opportunity as board directors to serve on key committees as well, where we can have an impact. So whether it's on the compensation committee, where I've served, and where you certainly do get access to the diversity of team and how they are compensated, because in some cases there's issues related to equity there that in some cases have also been long-standing issues. And in addition, they serving on the nominating and governance committee as well. There's a great opportunity to continue to attract additional qualified women and really leverage your opportunity there in a committee role by serving on those two committees when there's an opportunity to do so.
Sherry, we're still having a little trouble hearing you. I might have you look at, I'm sorry, because we're just wanting to hear every word you're saying because it's so helpful and so insightful. I might have you project a little bit more the next time you talk. Thank you. I'd like to turn to our next question, because one of our themes for this year's 2020 Women on Boards is leading through crisis. 2020 has been a year of change and challenge. Some would describe it as one crisis after the next. We started with COVID, went into Black Lives Matter, political unrest, and just, you know, with some of our issues with COVID, I know that some have described the crisis of having their kids work remotely from home as a crisis on their schoolwork. So I know some of us have, and some of you have that very thing every day. You know, crisis really brings out the best in everyone. And, you know, sometimes they'll say the worst in everyone. But on the board front, I do think this is a time that the board has to step up and lead. This is the time that it may take thinking outside the box. It may take diverse and innovative approaches. Patty, I know you've been through an area of challenge, and I know most of it's a public record, and I don't want you to go into all the detail, but I'm really wanting to step back from maybe some of those areas of challenge on the board and ask you, are there some areas that demand a different approach in this leadership? And are there things that females or minorities bring to an area during a challenging time? Do you have some thoughts on that?
I do. I've learned a lot of hard lessons about leading through crisis, but of course, we got a lot of experts. It's December 2020. We've all learned a lot of hard lessons about leading through crisis, but probably the most important one is as a board member or as a leader, whether it's a board member, whether it's corporate, nonprofit, we're all going to face our share of crises. The most important thing is to ask questions, to listen really intently, to listen actively, like the way I described that Cami does, and to ask for help. I'll share one quick story. One of my boards, I was, and it's kind of public record, so I'll share it. I was chair of the board, and we got an unsolicited offer. This was many years ago, and I'd never dealt with anything like that before, but one of our newer board members had. He had just joined the board, hadn't even met him in person yet, but I knew he had experience. So I called him and I said, I really want to talk to you about this. We're going to have a special board call. And before I could say anything, he cut me off and said, do you even know how to do this? Have you ever done this before? And do you have any experience with this? And I very quickly and honestly said, no, I don't know how to do this. That's why I called you. Will you help me figure out how to navigate this? And in a crisis in particular, saying those words, will you help me, reaching out to mentors, other board members, reaching out to people that can give you advice, that's the important thing. When you're dealing with a crisis, you've all got to look at all the options. You've got to make sure every voice in the room is heard. Again, doesn't matter whether it's a nonprofit board or a for-profit board. You've really got to do that. And then even though it's a crisis, you've got to pause, take a breath, make sure that everything's been considered, that you've looked around all the corners, that you've considered the unintended consequences, and then you've got to move forward collectively. And women on boards are really good at that. They're really good at diffusing the situation. They're really good at making sure all voices are heard. That's one of the, I think, big advantages of having women on boards is during crisis.
Thank you, Patty. That's very encouraging, and it's a confidence builder to know that that voice being heard and makes a difference. I could ask questions of these 5 panelists for a long time. I've had the opportunity to talk with them and visit with them, and I just want to tell you what a wonderful sharing opportunity this is to hear from you directly and have the participants here on this webinar be able to hear the insights that you're offering. Thank you so much. I'm going to move to our final question for the panel, and it's one that I'd like to hear from all the panel members, because as we wind up, I've heard a lot of things today, and I'm going to reflect back on our real objective is to help our participants, those that are wanting to look at boards, those that are interested about boards, or those that are wanting to step up at their workplace and lead and continue to move to that next level. I wonder if we could just have each of the board panelists here give us maybe their 3 key things that you think people need to think about and do for their next step. Or perhaps if it's not 3 takeaways for them to go and do, maybe you tell us 3 strengths or 3 attributes so that we can build toward those strengths and fill in that gap that we may have to be ready to provide those to the next leadership or the next board seat that we seek to fill. I'm going to start with Cammie. Do you have 3 things that you would share?
Sure. I would say first, really own your career and own your development, that the way that you're likely to get onto a board first is by building your professional brand, by being known as someone who really adds value in a particular function or a particular industry. So your first responsibility is to learn how to be a successful leader in the environment that you find yourself in. And then it's also important to build your overall business judgment. And I think you've heard a lot today about the value of mentors, about building a strong relationship with your CEO and people who can guide you. And so ask for feedback often, look for the opportunities to stretch, and just know that it really starts with the business results, I think, in your day job.
Excellent. Excellent points, Cammie. Thank you. I'm going to go next to Sheila. Do you have 3 things, Sheila, that you could sum up for us?
I don't have 3, but I have 2. One is I would like to say over prepare. Do more than what you have to. I'll give you an example of that. At OGE, I am not on the audit committee, and that's a job that most people on boards don't want. But I do go through the audit book, even though I'm not on the audit committee and other committees on my other boards, because first of all, audit does tell you a lot about how the company operates. The numbers don't lie. They're pretty black and white. My other advice is to get to know auditors. As I shared with you, my first board came from my colleague at Ernst & Young. Remember, the auditors are in every board meeting. They kind of know when some movement is happening. And oftentimes their clients will ask them, we're looking for this kind of skill. Who do you know? So don't be afraid. And more importantly, I would say be proactive, that build relationship with auditors and let them know your desire to do board work, but also not just a desire, what you can contribute.
Thank you. Good points. Good observations. Patty?
Sure. Well, I agree with what Cammie and Sheila have said, so I'm not going to reiterate that. I would just add, and it's a theme I used a minute ago, it's ask for help. Go to men or women that you know that are on boards. As you put together your board bio, your resume, have somebody look at it for you. Often I will find women don't give themselves enough credit for the board work that they've done. They may be in senior management. They don't put down anything about board experience, yet they've been in every board meeting. They've presented to the board. They've prepared board materials. And maybe on a nonprofit board, they led through a crisis, a merger, an acquisition, something big. And they don't think to give themselves credit for that. And so other people can help look at your board bio and help make you more board ready, even though you already are. So ask for help.
Always a good point to do. We're going to go back to Sherry. I know Sherry's been having a little bit of audio trouble, but Sherry, we'd like to try you again. Have you had time to think about 3 things that you would like to share?
Well, the good news is serving on a panel with this many great smart people, we've covered a lot of the things that I probably would have said as well. And that's just great. I won't reiterate those. I will say that when you talk about managing your career, take those stretch assignments, those ones that maybe sometimes women say, I'm not 100% ready for that, so maybe I should say no. Say yes. And especially if you can, take one of those P&L roles, get in that opportunity to learn the financial side of business and really prepare yourself. My route to the C-suite was through operations, and I found that to be one of the most important things as my career accelerated and also as I looked for board opportunities. In addition, and Patty said this, just asking for help. I think that idea that executives won't want to be bothered. I think the answer is we do want to. We do want to help, and those of us that have had the opportunity to get into these roles, we do want to support and elevate others. And so, reach out, take that opportunity to take the initiative and ask questions. And I'll also say these days, through this and a lot of us have had experience in management, whether it's a like myself. Everybody's talking now about flexing and pivoting, and the ability to come in and change management and really set up success in your future and in your growth. So I encourage you to leverage the skills. The last thing I'll say is company board role was actually no. And I had the pleasure of being a company trying to pull out of starting up. And sometimes just a process like that, where you look at the CEO and director really gives you valuable experience that you take on into your career and work goals going forward.
Thank you, Sherry. And just that thing of just say yes, take those stretch assignments. Thank you so much. Sam, I'm wondering about your 3 ideas or 3 attributes that you would share with this group today.
Sure. I go back to the question you asked me earlier about advocating, and I think women have to advocate for women. And that's certainly, it starts there and what's going on here today. Some of this change is evolutionary, some of it's revolutionary. I think internally the boards move at a, I wouldn't say a snail's pace, but they don't move very fast in making changes. And so that's more the evolution. The revolution comes from organizations like Women on Boards who are very intentional about what they're trying to accomplish here. Second, it's been said, but building those skills and testing yourselves, pushing yourself, taking some non-traditional assignments. But with that, as I mentioned earlier, the work of board members, part art, part science, that duty of care and loyalty, making sure you have a grasp of the governance, art, and science. And then finally, I always think for all of us, we have to remain intellectually curious. And that, I think, is very important for board members. So if you are on a not-for-profit board, you're in the journey to a corporate board, that you're always concerned about learning new things and asking the right questions. And I think that's what really helps build and help you extrapolate your opportunities.
Okay, what a great panel, Trish. Thank you so much. And panelists, I do in Slido that we were running, we did have a couple of questions. And director coaches, these may be good things for you to consider to expand upon in the breakouts. But I'm going to ask one, and Patty, I'll just send this to you. We've had a question about, do public boards require a background of a public company to serve? So do you have to have that in the background to be able to be on it?
No, I would say that in the past, oftentimes boards would say, well, we want someone with a public company background. We want someone who's served on a board before. And my question always is, all of us served on a first board sometimes, so we can get past that. But I'm seeing more and more public company boards looking for people that have expertise, whether it's private or public. So it's not required.
Okay, great. And Sheila, how about where do people find out of openings, boards that have openings? Kind of what does that look like?
I laugh because my friends in the search business, they want to believe that they actually fulfill at least half of the board searches, but they don't. I say that it's more of a third, if that, maybe 25%. It really is word of mouth. Now, oftentimes a search firm will be involved, but I can tell you in the case of OGE, Deere, and Cisco, search firm was involved, but they were told to come talk to me. So they knew of me and had, somehow got networked to me and told the search. So word of mouth, and that's what I meant about the audit firms and letting people know that you have an interest and you have something to contribute.
That's good. That's good. All right. And then I think in the breakout rooms talking about, and maybe Cammie, you might want to take this one. Can you just cover quickly just, when you get paid to serve on a board, whether it's private, public, like what that range might look like? Because we had some interest in that as well.
Yeah, it can range pretty dramatically, and it's frequently weighted toward stock compensation or some sort of equity compensation, because shareholders want to make sure that the board is most focused on growing shareholder value. I will tell you that when you really think about the hours that you end up putting in and the compensation that you make, it's not about doing it for the compensation. It's, Patty would tell you during some of the crises that she's been at the helm, she was making far less than minimum wage.
I would have made more as a server at Red Robin. Absolutely. So.
All right. Well, Trish, any closing thoughts from you? Thank you so much. You did a fabulous job.
I just want to thank the panelists again. I mean, just watching these comments come in, Annette has just shown how they're really appreciating sharing the insight and that experience that this panel has. Thank you, everyone.
So before we transition to the breakout sessions, I just want to thank our sponsors, the co-chairs, the leadership team for all their work today to put this on. And not only do you get to hear from, obviously, these amazing people on the panel, but we have qualified and distinguished group of director coaches for your breakouts. And at this time, I'm going to ask the director coaches, the leadership team, and our OSU OKC students to go ahead and log off and get into the breakout rooms. We're going to wrap up, but then that way you will be in the room ready for your breakout session. So let me introduce our director coaches. Like I said, they're impressive men and women that serve on boards all over the country, and they've given their time to be with us today. So I appreciate their commitment to the Oklahoma Initiative, and I know that you're going to find a lot of value from working with them. So just thank you for being with us today. Whether you're moving into a role of leadership, maybe it's stepping up your board game, or a role as just being an advocate for others. It takes all of us advancing this important change to reach gender balance in our leadership teams and in our corporate boardrooms. So we encourage you to connect with us, and we're going to send out a post survey after this event. Please engage with us. The Oklahoma Initiative starts in 2021. We would love for you to be a part of that and get involved. If you are part of a nominating or governance chair of a board in this audience, please, if you have an active search, if you're looking for board ready candidates, please reach out. We have people not only from Oklahoma, but from across the U.S. through the Women on Boards Network. And for those of you that are interested in board service, we hope that today has inspired you and that you take the time to invest in yourself. Attend one of the workshops, get involved, reach out, get a mentor, do the things that you need to do to invest in yourself. So this has been a great inspiration for all of us. And I just want to leave you with this New York Stock Exchange picture, because we have Trish Horn and Sheila Talton that was on the panel. They both experienced ringing that bell yesterday on the New York Stock Exchange floor, and that could be one of us tomorrow. So hopefully you've been inspired, and we're going to ask you now to go ahead and click out of this meeting, and in your calendar invite, you have your breakout session. So we're going to ask everybody to move to your breakout session. There is in your calendar link a help desk if you have any problems. But this concludes this portion of our program, and we really appreciate you being with us today.